We have figured out in this administration how we can do the essential things we need to do, but not necessarily increase the property taxes. We know how to balance the budget. We're facing now an inflationary time. We know how to be fiscally responsible in a way that Wall Street raises our bond rating, and at the same time, we can cut taxes. This year, the fourth year that we've done it, I think shows where our philosophy is and where our practical backup to that philosophy is. We have to establish in people's minds, reestablish faith and trust in government. We want to show that we can fix things that are broken, creating the New Rochelle Family Court, the Memorial Field project just recently completed, on down the line, that we can do those things and we can continue to serve the basic services that we have. We run a prison, we run an airport, we have responsibility for sewer treatment plants, and a host of other different things. We have professionals in this government in the area of police, corrections, and probation departments. The funding levels that we create allow them to have the resources they need to do their jobs effectively, to fight and push back on crime. And that's exactly what we're doing with this budget. We are pushing back on crime. Government should be able to provide those services that are best provided by the society to the individual. We don't expect you to figure out how to dispose of your garbage. We don't expect you to figure out how to repair a bridge that you drive over every day. You work hard, you save your money, you use your money for the benefit of your family. We, in a government context, do that which we have to do to provide services that helps enhance that. Houses get snapped up quickly here. People want to live in Westchester County. We had an increase of almost 6% in population between the 2010 census and the 2020 census. We govern well. We balance our budget, we can cut taxes, we provide the basic services, and here in Westchester County, we've achieved a very solid quality of life, knowing that we deliver those basic services for your benefit. Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and I'm here with Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins and also with our Director of Operations, Joan McDonald, to present our proposed Westchester County budget for the year 2023. Today is Thursday, November 10th. We're joined in studio by members of the Westchester County Board of Legislators, led by their chair, Catherine Borgia, who at the end of this presentation will accept the budget for her review and the review of those members who are here. I should point out the Vice Chair of the Board, Nancy Barr, is with us. The Majority Whip of the Board, Jose Alvarado, is present. The Minority Leader of the Board, Margaret Kunzio, is here, and as well the legislator who chairs the Budget and Appropriations Committee, Vedat Gashi. And these individuals, along with Chris Johnson and James Nolan, are the leadership of the board that will be dealing with this budget as it falls into their hands at the end of this. We're also joined by some of the terrific professionals that staff our Westchester County government. I have commissioners with us here, Michael Orth from Community Mental Health, Rocco Posey from Probation, Kathy O'Connor from Parks, Recreation, and Conservation, and her Deputy Commissioner, Peter Tartaglia. Our Commissioner of Emergency Services, Richard Wishney, is with us here. We're joined as well by many of our senior staff individuals, our Director of Economic Development, Bridget Gibbons, our Director of Research, Ellen Hendricks, our Deputy Director of Operations, Emily Saltzman, is with us here, and others too numerous to mention. They are all part of this process of both developing a budget, reviewing the budget, and then hopefully in time for the new year that begins January 1st, the beginning of our fiscal year, the adoption of that budget. So you've heard a little bit in the video about what our principles are. Let me just handle a few more of the generalities, and then I will ask Joan, Ken, and Larry Sewell, our budget director, to touch on a couple of other principles that are here. This budget comes at a time when Westchester residents and Americans in general have an uneasiness. And that uneasiness comes from issues that are locally based, but even much more so nationally based and perhaps internationally based. The war in Ukraine continues on. We look at an international economic concern in the aftermath of the heart of COVID, although COVID is not gone from our consciousness. And those economic problems that cause inflation today, potentially cause a recession in the future, issues of fear of crime, issues of fear of loss of various rights that people have come to accept for many, many years, that's created uneasiness in our society. A county government does not necessarily deal with the root causes of those issues, but we have to live and govern in that climate. And in that climate, the budget that we have presented is the starting point for a discussion about what is it that Westchester County is responsible to do within that mix of government responsibilities. We are responsible, as we just said a few seconds ago, to treat sewerage. We are responsible to provide some level of public safety through our police, corrections, and probation departments. We do have the opportunity to give people the relaxation and the quality of life that Parks and Recreation provides. We have the responsibility to answer to public health issues and also to deal with mental health issues. And the many other departments and offices that we have fall under the funding in this budget. Because it is true that while we all talk about the things that we support, the things we advocate for, laws that we passed, it is in the way we determine to spend money that we show what our real policy priorities are. And if we say that we're for fighting crime, but it's rhetoric, that isn't effective. If we say we're for helping people, but there's no backup to deliver that help, then it's just rhetoric. And we believe in results. We believe in delivering those things. We've tried to do that over the first 5 years of this administration, and we hope that this budget, in its final form, will help us get through the next year of that responsibility. This budget for 2023 has a couple of key indicators in it that we think is important so that you know that the fiscal stability of this county will continue. This budget does not borrow to pay back tax certiorari payments that we're obligated to pay by court action. This budget does not borrow to pay for pension obligations that we have to the state of New York. This budget does not use our fund balance, our savings account, to balance and therefore operate our government for the course of that year. We do not borrow in this budget for cash flow, either through tax anticipation notes or revenue anticipation notes. Those are fundamental, realistic policies that reflect an intelligent fiscal management strategy. And when we discuss those types of things, those are the things that the bond rating agencies look at when they make an assessment as to whether or not Westchester County or any government is properly structured. State Controller has an annual audit of all local governments where they come out with a stress report. How stressed are the fiscal structure of a given government, a city, a town, a village, a county, a school district, and so forth. And Westchester County got the highest rating under that review that the State Controller recently issued. And we also have the rating agencies in New York City, based in New York City, that assess the credit worthiness of governments in the same way that your credit score will determine the credit worthiness of you as an individual or within your family. Those agencies, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, Fitch, go through a very rigorous professional assessment of where we are as a county. And they made an assessment a number of years ago that downgraded our bond rating. Although we've had a historic AAA bond rating for a number of reasons, they downgraded us and they put us on a negative outlook. Over the last year, we've lifted that negative outlook to a stable position, and we believe this budget will address and assess some of those concerns. We have a AA plus or AA1 rating standards by some of these different agencies, but we must show consistent fiscal policies year after year in order to raise that back up to the AAA bond rating. We believe this budget does that. I'm going to ask Larry Sewell, our Director of the Budget, just to join me here at the podium to address one particular issue that underlies everything in this budget and everything in the deliberations ahead, and that is what we think the impact of inflation today and the potential for recession that may come in the future, what that means for the budget as it has been constructed. Larry Sewell.
Thank you, George. Yes, so I mean, there's certainly uncertainty. We heard today, this morning, the announcement that inflation, is trending in the right direction. We were at 8.2%. The headline inflation numbers that came out this morning were 7.7%. So that bodes well as far as future interest rate increases, that the Fed, if they continue to see consecutive month-over-month reductions in the or deceleration in the rate of inflation, they may be looking at lower increases. So it may be, instead of 75 basis points at the next Fed meeting, it might be 50 basis points. The positive thing with interest rates is we were getting less than $100,000 on our balances. And now that we actually have balances, we've improved our position. we're budgeting over $5 million in earnings, and thanks to Commissioner of Finance in terms of helping with that. So there is a benefit for us in terms of the interest rate side. The other side of the equation is we pay more for our bond issues. So we do have a higher interest amount that we're going to be paying on our bonds going forward, which is factored into the 2023 budget. In addition, I think with the uncertainty, and we don't know, if there's going to be a recession, and if there is a recession, and I know I probably shouldn't use that word, but sorry about that. That we don't know, if there is one, how shallow and how long it will be, and will there be a soft landing? I think one of the positive things is the amount of savings that households have right now in reserve is significant, which bodes well for having a soft landing, I think. And so, it's a balancing act. And so the other areas where we're impacted is obviously our energy usage, and we've done a lot over the last few years under this administration in terms of reducing our reliance on oil and energy, and electrifying our fleet, electrifying our bus system. For example, our bus system, previous to having hybrid and electric buses, we utilized 3.1 million gallons of ultra-low sulfur diesel a year. Now we're down to about 2.4 million gallons, and that continues to decline as we fully electrify our fleet of buses. So that's very, very important. And there's a lot of energy usage, say, in our sewer treatment plants, and so we've factored that into our budget. We've put a healthy increase in terms of our assumption and on the price of energy next year for the sewage treatment plants. So, this budget addresses it, and I think we're very conservative in terms of our projection on the revenue side to address the fact that, there may be a slowdown in the economy that we're dealing with next year. The other thing is, though, inflation does have a positive impact on our sales tax, which is driving a lot of our growth right now, and that will continue at least into the first part of next year. So, thank you.
A former governor of the state once said that you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. In the period leading up to last Tuesday, there was a lot of poetry. This is prose. And I'm glad I have a master's degree in public administration. But I want to thank Larry for his professional work, and I also want to thank Karen Hablow, who is our finance director, for her professional work. It is not possible to govern at any level, county government, municipal government, or higher levels, unless you have lifelong professionals that do these things. And we rely on the work that Karen and Larry do to inform us so that those of us as policymakers set directions, but we also know whether they're realistic directions and that they have the ability of actually having the opportunity to come true and to be the actual way that we govern upon. I want to highlight a couple of departments. I'm going to ask Joan and Ken also to do that as well. This budget is a $2.4 billion budget. It covers the workings of, in round numbers, 4,500 employees spread out over major departments and smaller offices. And in this press conference, we don't intend to touch on all of them, but we think some of them are important because they touch on major issues in the society. I alluded to before the concern over public safety, that people have a sense that crime is rampant, it's out of control, and what are you doing about it? And of course, some of it deals with the public policy issues that are at the state level, the issues of bail reform. Those issues do not find any resolution at our level of government, but we have a responsibility in three key departments: public safety, county police, corrections, and probation, to address these issues in a very direct way. And I want to highlight that this budget is a record-setting budget in this area of law enforcement. We have funded those three departments at the highest level that they have ever been funded in Westchester County. The total of that altogether is $261 million. So any rhetoric that you hear and people talk about defunding the police, those are political positions that individuals take. But we are running a government. We're running the government of the county of Westchester. And in that set of responsibilities, what our police department does, what our correction department does, and what our probation department does, which helps keep us safe, is being funded at record numbers. Much higher today than they were 5 years ago. In this budget, we fund corrections $156.6 million. We fund our Department of Public Safety, County Police at $59.1 million, and our Probation Department at $45.2 million. The allocation in this budget includes crime data analyst and IT coordinator for public safety, 3 additional school resource officers for the Katona, North Salem, and Hendrick Hudson school districts, and a new class of correction officers, which are included in this budget. And I know I've highlighted this previously, but let me do it again. We think of law enforcement as being the police, which they are, but corrections and probations are also critical players in law enforcement. When a person has been incarcerated because they have been found guilty of a crime, they will, if they're in the county jail, because of the tenure of sentencing, will be released at the end of no more than a 1-year sentence. The nature of the crime is proportionate for which a 1-year sentence is appropriate. They will be back in the community. So the programs that we fund in this budget in the Corrections Department is essential because we know that when a person is released from prison, they can go back to their prior behavior or they can chart a new path. And the programs that we fund in this budget, we've had funded them for a number of years, the ability to get certification for culinary arts, to get certification for landscape, gives those individuals, those residents who leave, an opportunity for gainful employment, legal employment, and helps them avoid going back to the behavior that put them into the criminal justice system in the first place. We have high school equivalency diploma opportunities and even some college courses on the belief that a better life is possible, a life free of crime. And the probation department deals with those individuals immediately when they've been released. They're on probation. Whenever you were hired in a job, you were hired on probation. Whenever you did something bad in elementary school, you were put on probation. That is a period of time where you have to be scrutinized to make sure that you're following the rules. That is a very tough task. And the 160 strong men and women of our probation department are tasked with helping those individuals stick to what their probation requires them to do, which is get on the straight and narrow. Those are elements that help give us a low recidivism rate and a greater likelihood that that person is not going to be committing a crime, and that crime would be against you as a resident, as a citizen. So in this budget, we have funded these 3 departments, along with all the other departments, health, public health and mental health and parks and recreation and Department of Environmental Facilities. But in this area, we funded these 3 departments as a means of saying this is how we're dealing with the fear of crime. The fear is real. You cannot tell somebody don't be afraid of something, but you can say you have a fear. This is how we're addressing it, how we're doing it substantively. And I might add, crediting our leadership in those 3 departments, we have in Rocco Posey in the Probations Department, Joe Spano in the Corrections Department, and currently Acting Commissioner Terrence Rayner in the Department of Public Safety. We have lifelong professionals who are backed up by people around them who are professionals, and they give us the best possible ability to accomplish these tasks. Next, I want to talk about economic development. Westchester County has long been a base where our economic development has been robust. As a young man growing up here, a child growing up here, we saw major U.S. corporations move into Westchester County. IBM, PepsiCo in their day, Nestle USA, Texaco in their day, and now we have other ones who are here in addition to PepsiCo and IBM, MasterCard, Heineken USA, the Regeneron, and so many others. But economic development is a critical part of how this government moves forward and how this county moves forward. Joan McDonald leads a team of people that includes Bridget Gibbons and Deb Novick and others that are devoted to economic development. I want her to touch on what this budget does in terms of economic development.
Thank you, George. First, I'd like to start by echoing what the county executive said, because when we talk about the economy and the economic sector in this county, what economies and companies, large and small, look at is the fiscal stability of their governments. And the initiatives that the county executive outlined are critically important to them. Fiscal stability, no borrowing for pension liability, no using our reserve fund. Though they look at that very closely, and as Larry said, being conservative about our revenue projections and staying within that budget, which is very, very important to the private sector in this county, and it's how the county executive, laid that out right from the get-go. But to supplement that, we have programs to assist our growing small business sector, our tourism sector, et cetera. So This budget includes $6 million for economic development programs with a focus on life science, tourism, and the healthcare sectors. It includes $1.4 million for the DIG program. The DIG program stands for Downtown Improvement Grant Program. We are proposing in this budget to establish a new program where 4 pilot communities through a competitive process partnering with their chambers of commerce will submit a strategic plan, and we will evaluate them. We will designate 4, and then we will work with them on making some investments in their communities. We're excited about this great initiative. It was Sherry Asher's brainchild. She's not with us today, but we're excited to launch this. Life science companies, advanced manufacturing companies, startups, and others are thriving here, and we are proud to provide training, education, and other resources to support them, including $500,000 with the Westchester County Association for the Healthcare Pipeline Program. We all know the need for employees and for personnel in the healthcare sector. The county's hotel industry was hard hit by COVID, with property closings changing the type and size of business we can handle here in the county. We have evolved tourism marketing efforts to attract leisure, business, and meeting clientele that our hotels and tourism partners can serve well, with the intention of prompting repeat business. The momentum with our film industry is very, very strong, and we're investing approximately $2.6 million in programs to help tourism and film, and we are excited to continue all those initiatives. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Ms. Joe. With each of these different areas of initiatives, we're giving you just sort of an outline. The Board of Legislators will delve deeply through the Budget and Appropriations Committee and will ask pointed questions in each of these different areas designed to elicit full input and full understanding, and then shaping the budget through their evaluation. And in a few minutes, Catherine Borgia, who's the chair of the board, will also outline a little bit about their plans of how they intend to include the public in that debate, which is always an important part of this. So you'll get a chance to get more details on some of these things. Next, I'd like Ken Jenkins, our Deputy County Executive, to touch on some of the initiatives that we have here that relate to our health and mental health portions of the budget. We've been through COVID, so we understand exactly how important our health department is in that particular area, dealing with infectious diseases. And there are other functions that the county health department does on an ongoing basis, sanitarian responsibilities and so forth. And then our mental health department couldn't be in a more timely element in our society, where we see mental health issues rising in every level of endeavor. Ken Jenkins.
Okay. Thanks, George. And certainly to continue the echo the point that the budget reflects the priorities of any government, and in this case specifically in our health and mental health areas. Coming out of the pandemic, we understand how critically important it is. This proposed budget for the health department accounts for $220.8 million in the operating budget and $17.2 million for the Department of Community and Mental Health. The health budget includes some new initiatives that we're going to continue to follow up. Maternal mortality at $1 million. To our federally qualified health centers, the neighborhood health centers that have been our partners throughout the whole COVID crisis, an additional $1 million to bring it up to a total of $3 million of county investment under this administration and the Latimer administration. That has happened from bringing it from zero, which it was when we walked in the door in 2018, to now to $3 million to those partners that provide some critical services that we see in every community around Westchester County. The Department of Community Mental Health's budget includes the continuation of the outstanding program, Project Alliance. County Executive pointed out about public safety and how important everyone understands it is. All of these pieces work together to ensure that we have the safest community possible. So this investment with Project Alliance deals with our folks in law enforcement, our emergency services, and medical personnel to divert folks from being inside of the system, where it's a health issue and not a police issue, because we do ask our police to do far too much, and we have to continue to help support them and our communities in doing that. We have some more support for the 988 Suicide Crisis Lifeline. It is just so important. We had our veteran ceremony yesterday, and the gentleman that spoke to us yesterday spoke directly about the challenges of our veterans coming and returning and making sure that we have those investments, and there is not enough money that we can do to say thank you to help support the families and those members of the military, whether they're male or female, to be able to live in our community. So this continued investment in the Suicide Crisis Lifeline is critically important. Opioid response and overdose prevention service initiatives, another $500,000 that are being invested in that. There is not a community that is not touched by that. Again, this administration continues to do that level of focus to make sure that every one of the people in our communities can be handled, and certainly some more money in our early childhood mental health services. The pandemic has showed how important that it is for our young people to get those services and outlets that they did not have a chance to do during the COVID times. And now another $737,000 being invested in that. Again, the continuation for mental health and health services, and the sanitarians the county executive talked about for pools and inspectors, et cetera, to help lower the amount of time it takes to get the required services done. And that's been a hallmark of the Latimer administration. Thanks, George.
So I'm going to touch on a couple of other areas rather briefly, and then we'll wrap up our general conversation and let the board get at their work that's coming ahead of us. In the Department of Emergency Services, Westchester County Emergency Services has a total of $13 million in the county operating budget. We have great confidence in Commissioner Rich Wishney, longtime friend of mine and an outstanding public official in his own right, along with his Deputy Commissioner Susan Spear, that we're going to be able to make progress in a host of areas. This includes $3.3 million for EMS mutual aid support. It includes dealing with the ongoing threat assessment management operations, and when you think about being safe on the next level up, what a terrorist threat might be it a domestic or an international terrorist, that falls within this operational assessment along with the public safety. And 2 additional staff members for CEMP to coordinate volunteers for hazmat incidents. Once again, another element of safety that our Emergency Services Department does so well. In our Parks and Recreation Department, the total amount of the budget is $60.3 million. Combined, $28 million has been slotted for structural improvements. We've discussed some of that already when we presented the capital budget for the Playland Ice Casino and at the amusement park. $7 million has been allocated for Hilltop Hanover Farm and Environmental Center, which is being shifted to the operational responsibilities of the Parks Department. Kathy O'Connor rolls her eyes. What, more responsibility? Yes, because you handle the responsibilities that you have so beautifully. And also, we're very happy that we're putting $3.3 million in the capital for the Cranberry Lake Preserve, one of our 6 nature preserves, for improvements there. When we look at other park facilities that require improvement, and we've made an aggressive effort over these 5 years to fix things. I go through the litany all the time of the Spring Ridge pools and the North and South County Trailway, the Bronx River pathway. We have some work to do now in the Spring Ridge pool building, which I believe we have design work put into this capital budget. That building is going to need to have a complete redo. But we've seen the complete reconfiguration of Graham Hills Park for mountain biking and so many other facilities all around the county, and we're very happy that this is part of it. We've allocated money to the Human Rights Commission, $1.3 million for an additional investigator. Human Rights Commission under Tejas Sanchala and the leadership of Reverend Doris Dalton as chair of the board have been at the forefront of us standing up for the right things and opposing prejudice wherever it may be found in the society, and to be aggressive and active in that area, and that investigating function is important. Within our Youth Bureau, headed by Dr. Damia Harris-Madden, who's a tremendous professional, $4.7 million, including initiatives that expand the Invest in Kids program by another $250,000. We have in this budget money set aside for food insecurity. We have a host of different organizations that provide professional services through non-for-profit organizations. They are funded at a higher level this year than they have been in any year past, and we know that this is an area that the board puts particular scrutiny on and will determine that additional investment is necessary. And so we look forward to that discussion that's coming. The summary of this, very simply, is that we have a budget that addresses the operating needs of this county for the year 2023. We've taken into account the climate that we're in, the issues that are at hand, and we've been able to deliver a budget to the Board of Legislators that for the fourth consecutive year cuts county property tax levy. 4 years, not freezing, cutting county property tax levy. And you take my word for it, look at your county tax bills. Now, depending on what community you live in, there's an equalization rate and there's an assessment roll reality, but the cutting of the overall county tax levy is a significant achievement, given the fact that, just what we said, we've stabilized the finances of the county. We're spending money to make sure that all the operating departments operate well. We have money set aside to deal for a not-for-profit world with the social needs that we have. We have tried very hard to be very professional in this approach, and I understand that a certain amount, as I said a few minutes ago, of this business is poetry, or something that doesn't quite reach the level of poetry in the political process. I've been a member of that political process for a long time. I understand it. I also had 20-year experience in business that was prior to and to some degree overlapped my public experience. And I understand the need for objective, professional management. I understand that the chief executive officer does not know how every single department operates in its completion. And that is why the professionals who run these different departments are in positions of responsibility as commissioners. And it is not necessarily always the way that it happens. You'll get chief executive officers who micromanage. And that can be debilitating to the morale of a government. But we took the attitude when we came in now 5 years ago that we would not remove people for political purposes. We would keep professionals where we had them. We would attract new professionals where we could find them, and we would empower them. We would give them the ability to make decisions and to speak back to power what they thought was the best possible public policy. We encouraged our executive branch people to speak to the legislature as colleagues and friends and not as enemies, because it is the democratic small d process between legislative and executive that is the greatest check and balance that exists in a democracy. Go back and read something called the Magna Carta if you want the philosophical rootings for what a legislative body represents vis-a-vis an executive branch. And that in all of these things we are open to the press as well, that there is the fourth estate, the scrutiny that comes from those who ask us questions. We don't always have the answer. We sometimes give you the wrong answer because we didn't know the right answer, but the bottom line is we move forward. I say this because what this comes down to, again, you've heard this theme from me before, and this is a budget, this is prose, but this is also about proving, in the smaller jurisdictions of county, that we can self-govern, that democracy can work, that we can accomplish things over the course of a year. We can fix the things that are broken. We can administer the money that we have wisely and prudently, and we can be on a good, stable financial path and at the same time provide services that people want. And when the climate is right, as it has been for the last few years, we can do this with a little less money out of your wallet than it has before. And certainly when we see the economic problems, we make movements like suspending bus fares during the summer and now during the holiday season, or providing some relief from sales tax on your home heating oil. The greatest thing we have to show is that the answer to these questions is resolved by all of us in this room and all of us outside of this room. We represent a handful of the 4,500 people that work for this government, that receive a paycheck from this government. That pragmatism is what will get us through this year, what will get us through the next 5 years and 10 years, long after I'm out of this position. And ultimately, it will get America through this difficult moment, because the alternative of slavish attention to an ideology or slavish attention to any individual, where you see this individual, let's give this individual unilateral power, and somehow they will make it right, they will make it very wrong. History shows that absolute power in the hands of any one person is the most dangerous form of government. Democracy, in all of its messiness, is the best chance that we have to have people have a say in their future and to have the best possible future. And that is what today is. Today is a day of democracy, where we present a budget that will be scrutinized and that will ultimately be adopted, which we implement, and we deliver services, and we serve people, whether we're serving them at Kensico Dam Plaza or whether we're serving them by going into their restaurant to check the quality of the level of kitchen services sanitarily, or whether we're helping somebody in a moment of mental health crisis with professional services. And we're doing that with the legislative function, the executive function, the judicial function, working in some degree of mutual respect, even as there is natural conflict. But we can do it. We can manage it. We are Americans. Let me ask Catherine Borgia to join me here for the official handoff. This is getting heavier every year, or I'm getting older and a little weaker every year. I don't know what it was. As I've said in the past, I have been the recipient of this at least 4 times in the past. It is much nicer to hand it to somebody than to have it handed to me. But Catherine is the chair of the Board of Legislators. It falls to her responsibility this year to supervise how this goes. So, Madam Chairman, the budget is all yours.
Thank you.
Good luck
Thank
with
you
it.
very much.
And the podium is yours as well.
Thank you. So I want to thank the county executive and his team for presenting to us a budget that seems to be very well proportioned to meet the needs of Westchester County, take advantage of the opportunities that we have before us right now, as well as preserving our fiscal health and providing for the future. Every year that I get this budget, I think, oh, this is going to be so difficult to review all of these things. And then by the end of the budget review process, we basically have it memorized, right? So we are looking forward to starting on Monday, doing our review of every single page of this budget. We do a budget review, and Budget and Appropriations Chair Vidat Gashi is here. He looks a little bit worried, as having served in that role for 4 years. I can understand that, but it is a marvelous process for the legislative and executive branch to work together to crystallize our priorities, to have that give and take, to show that we are partners in this business of governing. I will also say that I confess to being something of a math nerd, but I do believe that as prosaic as the budget review process is, there is poetry in it, because a budget is a physical plan to articulate and to achieve your values. And the values of Westchester County, I think, are very strong. You've heard them well articulated here. I think together we're going to provide a budget that keeps people healthy, safe, provides them with recreational opportunities at the best possible use of our resources, and with a decrease in their property taxes. So I am oddly looking forward to the next several weeks. We start our budget process on Monday. We have a dashboard on our website that will allow you to view and participate in a certain extent all of our budget meetings. We do also have 2 budget mini hearings, one next Wednesday, the 16th, at the New Rochelle Public Library, one on the 30th, which I believe is also a Wednesday, at the Performing Arts Center in Chappaqua. The first week of December is a very, very busy time in the legislature. We have Ads Day on the Monday of the first full week. Our statutory budget hearing is on the Wednesday of that week, December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. You can also participate in that in person in our chamber or remotely. And then the Friday of that day is, that week is Deletes Day. So that's our budget process. We do anticipate this being a smooth process and to pass the budget on December 12th. So thank you to the county executive and his team. And we're looking forward to the next several weeks. Thank you. Take this. Hand this over to Vidat immediately.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We have members of the press present with us. If they have any on-topic questions relating to the budget, Tony Aiello.
Understanding that the biggest cost in an operating budget typically is labor, I'm curious, is inflation impacting the other side of the ledger in terms of what you have to buy, supplies, goods and services?
Yes, I think Larry alluded to that there is some mathematical projection of what the expected costs will be. He talked a little bit about fuel costs, which of course have started to come down a little bit, but there are other costs that are still going up, and those expectations are built into the budget. I don't know if there's a standard percentage or if it depends on the type of product that we're looking at. But if a Department A has spent $100 for some particular function in purchasing, then it's been increased a little bit to anticipate for what inflation might be, and still worked into the budget process. But we don't know, obviously, how long we're going to see the inflationary trends, the fact that it's gone down most recently a little bit. If that trend line continues, then that may give us some flexibility in the budget, so that would be helpful to us if that's the case. But I think there is an expectation that that what we bought a year ago is going to cost more today, and that we budgeted to accommodate that.
Joan, do you have a number baked in? The Fed obviously trying to get inflation down from 7.7 to 2. Did you split the difference there?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, so I'm going to ask my right-hand person in budget, Larry, to fill you in. Tony.
Yeah, so I think we've started to see, easing of supply chain issues, through our purchasing department, which has been driving a lot of the increase in the, aside from energy that I spoke about. And I think we have factored in there around a 5% increase for, all of the materials and supplies that the county has to purchase. And as far as, labor contracts, the police union contract is settled, and we're in negotiations with the other unions as well.
While you're there, what's the top number? 2 billion and change, 2 point?
It rounds up to 2.4. It's 2.367 to be exact, I think, is the number.
Last year, how much money did the B of L add through the amendments process?
I honestly do not remember that number, but it's in our current budget document online. You could see what the board did add and delete from the budget.
We deleted what we added.
Right. So
they added, right?
It did it to nothing.
Yeah. So the on adds and deletes day, they net out to zero essentially.
They net out to zero.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that. And Mr. Latimer, there's a number of interesting initiatives that you mentioned, that the Deputy County Executive mentioned. What are the top 2 or 3 in your mind that you would like to highlight for Westchester residents?
Well, I think there are a couple of different lanes that are important to know. What Ken mentioned in our mental health department are very critical. I think we're seeing mental health issues predominate in lots of different areas. Some of this, I guess, is the aftermath of COVID. And what Ken talked about, the funding for our federally qualified health centers represents a public health investment, which we think is a very important situation. Those neighborhood health centers, federally qualified neighborhood health centers like Open Door, Sun River, Mount Vernon Health Center, those deal with the health needs of people in the most impoverished neighborhoods of Westchester County. So making sure that we add an additional $1 million in funding there, we think is a very important initiative that's worthy of attention. The opioid response and prevention initiative is an important one. Now, we've had the benefit of opioid funding from the lawsuit settlements, but what was always understood is that if we received money from those settlements, we would now launch initiatives to try to reduce opioid addiction. And that's an initiative that we think is going to be very important, and how well it is received. And then early childhood mental health services, which Ken alluded to, is 737 million, represents the kind of proactive effort that we're seeing in the society to try to reach children at a younger age when the need is identified. And so we think those types of things are important. The maternal mortality issue of additional $1 million we think is also important. So those are some of the highlighted issue in that mental health area that we think are very, very important.
And inflation works on your budget in many different ways, including, I'm going to assume, boosting your sales tax revenue. Can someone walk through that and what you're seeing?
Okay. So the reality is that when we have additional cost for a product or service, the sales tax is fixed. No one should think that we raise sales tax. Sales tax is at the same rate that it is previously. The item costs more money, so you pay pennies on the dollar more if the item has gone up. That additional sales tax revenue has provided us with some of the breathing space we need to then turn around and reduce sales tax on certain set circumstances. We did that this summer when we took pennies off the gallon in gasoline. That cost us $7 million for a quarter, I believe, if my number is correct. And Joan indicated that what we're doing with the fuel cost is a $12 million loss of sales tax revenue. So while it doesn't balance out perfectly, the fact that we have additional sales tax revenue coming in because of the higher cost of items, we then turn around and turn into some sales tax rescissions. And as we did this past year, we made the decision on rescinding bus fares. Knowing that we had additional revenue from sales tax, we made that decision because of the need for alternate transportation in the summertime when the cost of fuel was so high. We reserved that right that if the sales tax gives us additional revenue, we can then use that revenue for other types of things along those lines this summer if we determine that's necessary. We always consult with the board before we do those things. So the additional money that's generated incrementally by the higher cost of a product is not money that we somehow drop to the bottom line. We may use it for fund balance, but we may also use it as revenue that we then return to the individual by reducing the costs in targeted areas where we think those issues are important, like home heating in the winter and transportation in the summer. Any other questions? Thank you very much for being with us today. This is the beginning of a process. The Board of Legislators takes the lead from this point forward, and I'm sure Chairwoman Borgia and her team will have a number of press conferences to outline where they're heading. At some point in time, when they complete their work, the budget will come back to us for our final approvals, and I haven't had to take out my veto pen yet in 5 years. I don't plan to again. It's there, but we'll look forward to amiable negotiations that get us to the final product. So thank you all for being with us. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you all.